Just when we thought the Persian Gulf couldn't get any hotter, things hit a terrifying new level. The United States has officially unleashed the USS Gerald R. from its Caribbean mission. This 100,000-ton Titan is now steaming toward the Middle East, joining the USS Abraham Lincoln. Together, they are creating an unprecedented dual-carrier strike force right in Iran's backyard. This massive deployment comes as Donald Trump warns of very traumatic consequences if diplomatic talks fail, and the clock is rapidly ticking down. Recent Israeli intelligence reports have revealed a terrifying reality unfolding behind closed doors. Iran has reconstituted a staggering arsenal of up to 2,000 ballistic missiles in just a few weeks. Why does the Pentagon need 2 supercarriers to handle this specific and escalating crisis? How do the stealth F-35s of the Lincoln and the electromagnetic catapults of the Ford create the ultimate trap? Today, we decode the deadly synergy of this dual-carrier strike force in the Middle East. I'm going to show you exactly how the U.S. Navy plans to dismantle a massive swarm attack. Welcome to the tip of the spear. To understand why 2 massive aircraft carriers are converging in the Persian Gulf, we must look at the geopolitical chessboard. Right now, behind closed doors in Oman, intense mediated negotiations are completely stalling. In the art of war, a wise commander always gives their enemy a golden bridge to retreat and save face. The current 30-day diplomatic deadline was supposed to be that golden bridge for the regime in Tehran, but they are playing extreme hardball, refusing to discuss their ballistic missiles or proxy armies, and clearly not taking the exit. This stalling is a classic asymmetric playbook to buy critical time. Recent Israeli intelligence reveals that Iran has miraculously reconstituted its strike capabilities in just a matter of weeks. Satellite imagery confirms the rapid repair of heavily fortified factories, churning out an arsenal of up to 2,000 ballistic missiles. Meanwhile, the regime is ruthlessly crushing protests, and figures like exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi are openly calling for regime change. This escalating reality is exactly why sending just 1 aircraft carrier is no longer a viable option. The Pentagon is not planning a simple, one-night punitive strike this time. They are actively preparing for a massive, weeks-long sustained military campaign that targets state infrastructure and command nodes. A single carrier, even the USS Abraham Lincoln, could potentially be exhausted and overwhelmed by a multi-domain saturation attack over multiple weeks. By deploying the USS Gerald R. alongside the Lincoln, the Pentagon flips the script entirely. This is the aggressive return of the maximum pressure campaign, but with undeniable kinetic teeth. Having 2 supercarriers provides the sustained sortie generation rate needed to bomb targets around the clock for weeks. It sends a massive message to the Ayatollah. If that golden bridge expires, the United States has the immediate firepower to execute those traumatic consequences. Together, they establish absolute dominance over the Strait of Hormuz, securing 20% of the world's daily oil supply. It is a stark reminder that diplomacy only truly works when backed by devastating military force. But what exactly are these 2 massive supercarriers sailing into? The Persian Gulf is not the vast open waters of the Pacific Ocean. It is a highly constrained, incredibly shallow, and heavily congested body of water. Operating a 100,000-ton supercarrier here is often compared to putting a heavyweight boxer inside a telephone booth. This geographical reality perfectly favors Iran's most lethal military strategy, the asymmetric playbook. Let's break down the deeply layered defense network that the Ford and Lincoln must dismantle. Layer 1 is the primary strategic deterrent, the massive ballistic missile arsenal. As intelligence confirmed, up to 2,000 missiles have been rapidly reconstituted. But these weapons are not just sitting out in the open desert, waiting to be destroyed by American bombs. They are deeply entrenched within massive, subterranean missile cities carved directly into the Zagros Mountains. These underground fortresses house specialized, highly accurate anti-ship ballistic missiles like the Khalij Fars. These so-called carrier killers use advanced electro-optical seekers to lock onto large moving vessels with terrifying precision. To protect these launch sites, Tehran relies heavily on Layer 2, the Integrated Air Defense System, or IADS. This is a formidable overlapping network of Russian-designed S-300 and highly advanced S-400 surface-to-air missile batteries. The S-400 utilizes multiple radar frequencies to detect even low observable targets, posing a severe threat to fourth-generation fighters. It creates a massive anti-access area denial bubble, essentially a heavily armed no-fly zone over the entire coast. This IADS is further fortified with radar decoys, early warning arrays, and aggressive electronic warfare jamming. However, the most unpredictable and chaotic threat facing the U.S. Navy is Layer 3, the multi-domain swarm. This involves the Revolutionary Guard Navy and their heavily armed proxy forces, particularly the Houthi militias. The Houthis open up an entirely separate southern front, forcing the American fleet to split its defensive attention. Their strategy relies on overwhelming advanced American defense systems with sheer numbers and cheap technology. Imagine hundreds of heavily armed, fast-attack boats hiding in the countless coves and commercial shipping lanes. Many are explicitly designed to act as remote-controlled, explosive-laden kamikaze vessels ready to ram a destroyer. In the air above, this surface swarm is complemented by massive waves of low-flying, loitering munitions. These are the infamous Shahed-style drones, exceptionally cheap to mass-produce, but incredibly dangerous in large numbers. The tactical goal of these drone swarms is not necessarily to sink the USS Gerald R directly. Instead, their primary mission is the absolute saturation and depletion of the American Aegis combat system. A single Shahed drone might cost just $20,000 to manufacture and deploy. Yet the American SM-6 interceptor required to shoot it down costs over $4 million per unit. The drones are deployed to absorb and empty the multi-million-dollar vertical launch magazines of the escorting destroyers. If the Aegis ships empty their magazines shooting down cheap drones, the fleet is left completely defenseless. That is the exact moment the heavy, supersonic anti-ship ballistic missiles would rain down from the mountains. But beyond the airborne and surface swarms, there is a hidden, silent killer waiting beneath the waves: highly advanced naval mines. The Strait of Hormuz is incredibly narrow, with shipping lanes barely 2 miles wide in some transit corridors. The IRGC Navy excels at covert mine-laying operations using civilian-looking dhows and small submarines. They possess thousands of acoustic and magnetic influence mines designed to sit silently on the shallow seabed. Striking a single cheap naval mine could instantly cripple a multi-billion-dollar destroyer or inflict catastrophic mission-kill damage to a supercarrier. This unseen subsurface threat forces the American fleet to move at a slow, agonizingly predictable pace. They must heavily rely on MH-53E Sea Dragon helicopters to continuously sweep the dangerous waters ahead. It is a terrifying, highly coordinated kill web designed specifically to overwhelm a single carrier strike group. This mathematical and tactical reality is exactly why deploying a single aircraft carrier is no longer a viable option. If an adversary throws a multi-domain saturation attack at you, you need an overwhelming multi-domain response. You need the ability to absorb the swarm, clear the mines, blind their sensors, kick down the door, and punish the launch sites simultaneously. And that is precisely where the devastating, complementary synergy of the Lincoln and the Ford comes into play. A common misconception among casual observers is that these two supercarriers are identical twins. People assume the Navy just sent a carbon copy to double the exact same firepower, but in reality, they bring completely different yet perfectly complementary capabilities to the Persian Gulf. Let's look at the USS Abraham Lincoln first, the designated stealth vanguard. The undisputed star of the Lincoln's carrier air wing is the 5th-generation F-35C Lightning II. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney F-135 engine, it is built for one specific, highly dangerous job: It is specifically designed to conduct deep, penetrating strikes, slipping through those advanced S-300 and S-400 integrated air defense systems undetected. On the other hand, the USS Gerald R brings the raw, relentless endurance required for a multi-week campaign. Its true power lies deep within its hull, starting with two massive Bechtel A-1B nuclear reactors. This massive surplus of electrical energy feeds the electromagnetic aircraft launch system, also known as EMALS. EMALS replaces older steam catapults, drastically reducing the physical stress on airframes. This revolutionary infrastructure allows the Ford to generate a 33% higher sortie generation rate. That means 33% more fully loaded FA-18 Super Hornets blasting off the flight deck around the clock. These Super Hornets are the Navy's ultimate multi-role bomb trucks, but their most vital weapon right now is the APKWS anti-drone rocket. Here is where the brilliant math of economic warfare comes into play. A single Iranian Shahed drone costs about $20,000 to produce. Firing a $4 million SM-6 interceptor or $1 million AMRAAM missile at it is a losing mathematical game. But the APKWS rocket costs exactly $20,000 per unit. You are matching the cost of the enemy drone dollar for dollar. That is economic warfare at its absolute finest, allowing the fleet to preserve its multi-million-dollar stockpiles for the real ballistic missile threats. So, when you put the Lincoln and the Ford together, you create a flawless kill web. The F-35s go in first, silently kicking down the door and destroying the enemy's air defenses. Once the airspace is sanitized, the Ford uses its massive sortie generation rate to unleash an endless volley of strikes. It is a strategic masterpiece designed to completely dismantle the regime's infrastructure over weeks of sustained combat. Let's move into a terrifying, highly realistic hypothetical situation. What happens when the 30-day deadline officially expires? Imagine the calm Persian Gulf shattered by jet engines. E-2D Hawkeyes blasting off both carriers instantly detect a massive, multi-directional threat. 30 fast attack boats and 60 suicide drones swarming the fleet. The first American response is invisible but devastating. EA-18G Growlers intercept the swarm, using high-powered microwave technology to literally fry the drone's internal circuitry. Simultaneously, they aggressively jam coastal radars, leaving the Ayatollah's inner circle completely blind and disconnected. But the first physical strike comes from the crushing depths below. Virginia-class nuclear submarines, receiving targeting data from the Hawkeyes, unleash a devastating salvo of Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles without ever surfacing. Skimming the ocean, these missiles slam into Iran's primary command nodes and early warning radars, decapitating the defensive network before the F-35Cs drop a single bomb. With the electronic shield shattered, the stealthy F-35s blast into enemy airspace to annihilate the remaining surface-to-air missile batteries. Once the airspace is sanitized, the true multi-week campaign begins. Right behind the F-35s comes a relentless wave of Super Hornets, joined by U.S. Air Force F-15E Strike Eagles flying in from Jordan to meticulously pick off hundreds of targets. This introduces a terrifying level of unmanned warfare. MQ-9 Reapers silently hunt fleeing IRGC commanders, while autonomous wingman drones, like the Anduril Fury, execute kamikaze-style attacks on surviving radar sites to protect manned fighters. Down on the surface, Aegis destroyers shift into battle mode. The Phalanx close-in weapon systems rev up to a terrifying scream, firing thousands of depleted uranium rounds per minute to tear the remaining fast boats into burning splinters. Within minutes, the drone swarm is neutralized, and the F-35s circle high above, sending a crystal-clear message directly to Tehran. The bottom line is absolutely clear for anyone watching the situation in the Middle East. Deploying a dual-carrier strike force gives the United States overwhelming, sustained tactical options. It provides real, undeniable deterrence in an increasingly tense and dangerous geopolitical standoff. The Ford's advanced electromagnetic launch systems, combined with the stealth of the Lincoln's F-35s, create a strategic masterpiece. It is a powerful reminder that international diplomacy only truly works when backed by serious, devastating military teeth. The geopolitical game is moving extremely fast, and the stakes in the Persian Gulf have never been higher. So, where do you think this massive standoff goes from here, as the 30-day deadline approaches? Will this overwhelming show of American force compel Tehran to back down and return to the table? Or are we witnessing the final preparations for a devastating kinetic conflict? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because I read and value every single one. If you enjoyed this tactical deep dive, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon to join the Navy Power community for more expert military analysis. Thank you for watching today, and as always, I wish you fair winds and following seas.